Hey guys, Comic Boom here to wish you all a happy holidays for December 2024 and to thank all my subscribers and to also give thanks to Jace of the Comic Source Podcast, our collaborations throughout the year where we reviewed many a DC comic. I just wanted to wish everyone a happy holiday. And also with this episode, I wanted to go through my top 20, my top DC for the year, and also give some interesting stats about the weekly Comic Boom Comic Source podcast that I do with Jace that we collaborate on. We have picks of the week, and it was interesting looking at some of the statistics for those picks of the week that we actually discussed on Jace's podcast, the Comic Source podcast that I encourage you to check out. But I'm just going to give a sort of a brief sort of just a more brief sort of overview of some of the interesting statistics about our picks of the week and sort of some of the patterns that seem to manifest themselves in terms of the choices that we made throughout the 52 weeks of 2024, most of which we covered. We missed a couple weeks there, and we haven't included the week of December 25th. That review is going to be coming out later this week. But in any event, I wanted to talk about the top 20 DC comics that I think were very good comics. And so here now, the top 20 DC comics, my choices for 2024, it was very, very interesting because when I look back at 2024 and I look at the choices that I made when I made picks of the week, when I reviewed DC Comics every week for whatever the hell it was, 50 weeks. I know there's 52 weeks in a year, but I missed January 2nd. Jace missed a date in August because we got busy lives and sometimes we're not always available, each of us individually, to review DC Comics for that week. But it was very interesting, some of the patterns that emerged. And even though some of the, as I'll get into, some of the picks that were my favorite comics as the comic books were coming out, the series as a whole, some of the series didn't make overall big impression on me and never made my top 20 for DC. I also think you'll note that I have posted here on the channel, I've got a picture of the Kingdom Come Superman. And the reason why is that I love this statue. I got this statue up at work. And I've always loved this statue because I think it embodies the best of the Man of Steel, that he's in a meditative state. He's very calm. He's collected. I view this statue of him, this silver statue of him, sort of like meditating on and trying to close himself up to the world, or perhaps even broadening his mind so he could focus on doing what he needs to do to bring truth, justice, and a better tomorrow to everyone around the planet. So I think that if you were going to give an award to somebody for a really great comic, give them the Man of Steel. It should be called the Man of Steel Trophy. So that's what I'm calling it. So the Man of Steel goes to, boom. So without further ado, let's talk about my top 20 comics for 2024. Coming in at number 20 is Absolute Wonder Woman. Now, there are two other Absolute titles, of course, Batman and Superman. They're higher on the list. Absolute Wonder Woman, I think, is substantially better than mainstream Wonder Woman. I think in large part because I just find it far more interesting. Kelly Thompson has really, she's changed the window dressing of Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's character, for me, I got to be honest, is kind of the same. She's just as preachy as she ever was. She's prone to long speeches of dialogue. Her moral code is identical despite being raised on an island in hell. I think that there was, frankly, Kelly Thompson's approach to Wonder Woman was, frankly, to not do much anything different with her character. The changes with mainstream, with Absolute Wonder Woman, which has a lot of people excited, and I think is pretty cool, is the window dressing, i.e. the clothes. I mean, she's missing an arm. I mean, that's revealed in Absolute Wonder Woman number 3, and she's got a magical arm. The arm she does have has like tattoos on it, basically hexes, because she's more of a magic-based superhero with the same identical moral code as the mainstream Wonder Woman. And she's got a giant sword and a nemesis lasso, which is kind of cool. And we're just getting bits and pieces so far in the first 3 issues that have come out in 2024 of Absolute Wonder Woman. And so the jury is still out for me, but it's still, it has a cool factor, and the concept is so interesting. Set in the absolute universe, it's supposed to be a darker universe. Yet Kelly Thompson is clearly writing Wonder Woman as sort of like she's still an avatar of love and compassion, despite being raised in hell, and she's starkly stands out in hell, even being raised by Cersei, who in the mainstream universe is one of her arch enemies. Even her, even raised, being raised by one of the iterations of her own, one of her own supervillains in the mainstream universe, she still seems to be able to, her love and compassion seems to have an impact on all of hell's creatures, and it forms the basis of how she addresses humanity when she moves and reveals herself to humanity in the absolute Wonder Woman universe, in order to protect humanity from the bastions of hell, so to speak, and essentially fulfill her prophesized mission, or whatever it might be. The jury is still out, but it's Hayden Sherman's art is very unique. It's very stylistic. May not be for everybody. I got mixed feelings about it, but it does have some pretty cool moments. And it's something that is a good reason to stay and remain and be excited for 2025, moving into 2025. All right, so coming in at number 19, Alan Scott Green Lantern. I got to tell you, I thought long and hard, man. I got a list. I did. My God, I got about 8-9 pages here of notes, isolating all the comics that I thought were really good in 2024. And Alan Scott Green Lantern, this beat out a lot of comic books, simply because I was just amazed with the storytelling. I really think that Tim Sheridan did just a phenomenal job here. He managed to take the sexuality of Alan Scott Green Lantern, which, let's face it, is a very controversial thing. Making Alan Scott sort of changing his origin and making his formative years being that of a man who was struggling with his sexuality in the 1930s and 40s, moving into his origins of his traditional origin and tweaking that a bit to sort of incorporate the fact that the green flame that he ultimately ends up with, that gives him, of course, his Green Lantern powers, that to juxtapose that alongside his struggle, the struggle of, first of death and resurrection through the green flame and the mythology of the Earth 2 Green Lantern, which is what Alan Scott Green Lantern is, to juxtapose that against his sort of his acceptance of who he is, and his difficulty accepting who he is and loving who he is, despite his being someone whose sexuality was not accepted in the 1940s, and managing to incorporate that with a lot of verisimilitude and done in a very mature way that I thought was frankly excellent, just plain excellent. And it actually did a better job. It improved on the origin, in my view, of the Alan Scott Green Lantern, and incorporating stuff with Herbert Hoover, the FBI, and the Justice Society's origin as well. I thought worked really well. There was another title, Wesley Dodd's The Sandman by Robert Venditti, that was quite good. It didn't make my list, but if this would have been a top 25, top 30 list, Wesley Dodd's The Sandman by Robert Venditti and Riley Rosmo would have certainly been on that list as well. But kudos to Tim Sheridan and Tormey and Herms here, great creative team. They did a good job on the Alan Scott Green Lantern. Coming in at number 18 for me was Batman. The irony is that this probably feels like a demotion for Batman, because I think if you'd have told me last year that I was going to put Batman at number 18 and that wasn't going to at least make my top 10, I'd have told you were crazy. But the reality is it still made my top 20, and I was still entertained. Chip Zdarsky has taken... He's taken quite a bit of constructive criticism and dare I say even harsher criticism in some circles for his Batman run. But for the most part, the only part of his Batman run that I really didn't like was the Gotham War with Catwoman, which I think was a disaster. and that was with the Teenie Howard and the overlap with Catwoman. That was just plain fundamentally misunderstood the core concept of Batman and what he stands for, and just it was just insulting that entire the Gotham War. But his use of failsafe, I think, was inspired. I absolutely loved it. I love Batman in the multiverse. I love what he did with the origin of the Joker, with Dr. Captio, and I like what he's doing with the Riddler, sort of elevating the Riddler a bit. I like what he's doing with the assassination of Maranagano, and just the storylines itself. There's a maturity to it, to the storylines that I actually quite like, and I thought was very, very good. And so it's on my list. It's probably not going to be on most people's lists, quite frankly, but I still really enjoyed it. And at the end of the day, the reason why it never made my pick of the week at any point in 2024. But the ultimate test is when I look back, what were some of the most memorable events and my favorite storylines? Well, I really enjoy Batman. More often than not, I'm coming back to Failsafe, some Batman issues of Absolute Power, and just Dr. Captio, the Joker origin. Again, I really enjoyed. They stood out in my mind, and so that plays a huge part in how I evaluate. And so, yeah, I think that's significant. Number 17, coming in number 17 is Zatanna Bring Down the House. I got to tell you, this here surprised me. When this first came out, I got to tell you, Marika Tamaki is a writer that's extremely hit and miss with me. I first became familiar with her with a series called Supergirl Being Super, and I thought it was very underwhelming. I thought it was very teenage angsty, which of course it was supposed to be. So why did I was bored. It was just a boring comic. But Marika Tamaki had found her wheelhouse, and she became very popular, I think, with a younger audience, doing young adult fiction for DC, and much to her credit and to her success, and all the power to her. But it just wasn't my cup of tea. But then she did her run on Detective Comics I quite liked, and then lo and behold, she comes out with various storylines for DC, more and more, and some of them weren't bad, and but most of them I thought were mediocre. She even did an issue for Two-Face, for a one-shot of Two-Face that I wasn't a big fan of. But so I thought it was, once again, hit. Sometimes it's a miss. But this Zatanna Bring Down the House, I thought was really good. It's a Black Label series. It was rewriting and retweaking Zatanna a bit. It's Black Label is always a little bit out of continuity, although you could interpret this as being in continuity. It doesn't actually, frankly, quite fit, simply because it's about father-daughter issues, and Zatanna. This is really about Zatanna ultimately confronting the legacy of her father, Zatara, who was a magician and who abused his power and essentially tried to steal his daughter Zatanna was born with magical abilities, and he essentially tried to steal Zatanna's legacy. And it really taints, I guess you could say Marika Tamaki pulled a Tom King. She tainted the legacy of Zatara by making Zatanna, sort of have a very much a dysfunctional relationship with her father, and ultimately having to defeat the spirit of her father. But she does have a meeting with John Constantine here. She does a good job with the characterization. She gets her dialogue was excellent. Her story was good. The pacing was excellent. The art by Javier Rodriguez was excellent, and the cover A's were all amazing. Very well, and also the variant covers were all amazing too, when that's not always the case. And so I thought this was very well done overall, and it stood out in my memory when I reflected back on the year. And so it comes in at 17. Number 16, I put the Absolute Power main series. Now, there could be, I didn't want to identify individual Absolute Power issues. I just wanted to be fair to the Absolute Power main series itself. This wasn't the best DC event, but it was the best DC event that's come out in many years. It certainly was better than Night Terrors and Dark Crisis and Infinite Earths, which were frankly both disasters. This one, the rise of Amanda Waller, I thought this was very well done by Mark Waid. And I also thought that Nicole Maines as a writer really stepped up to the plate and really sort of made a name, further cemented a name for herself as being a writer to watch moving into the future. And in fact, you might want to keep an eye on Nicole Maines. She's going to be doing a series called Secret Six moving into 2025, which will have Jonathan Kent and Jay Nakamura on it. As well as Dreamer, and she's proven her mettle. She's actually a pretty damn good writer, and she's a damn good writer because I believe she's earned it with some really good stories. And she wasn't, let's be blunt, she was overcoming sort of the judgment of being like a diversity hire because of her, because she's a woman and she's trans, and she was an actress on the Supergirl show as Dreamer, and you thought maybe they were just checking off a box. You know what? She's a really good writer, or at a minimum, I view her as like a Jeremy Adams in the making. Jeremy Adams, who I'm going to be talking a lot about more later, but I think Nicole Maines has the potential to be a really good writer. She's a good one now, but I see her getting better. And in any event, Absolute Power was brought in by was harkened by Mark Waid, with great art by Dan Mora. I thought it was very compelling as the story moved forward. I was a little disappointing. There was simply too much going on, so it never really nailed the landing for me because I wanted so much more to happen. But unfortunately, it was only like a 6-issue series. It could only do so much, but it was still interesting and had its moments in 2024. Coming in at number 15 is Action Comics. Action Comics, there was a lot of great Action Comics in 2024. First, we have Philip Kennedy Johnson finished his run on this series with the House of Brainiac storyline, which I thought was absolutely excellent. Rafael Sandoval's art was absolutely incredible. Superman fighting Lobo and teaming up with Lobo, taking on the House of Brainiac and the Bottle City of Kandor. And it was just such a very strong, compelling storyline that really hammered, I thought really nailed its conclusion with the destruction of Brainiac in such a way that it led to the rise of the Brainiac Queen, flowing into absolute power with Amanda Waller sort of creating the Brainiac Queen from the remnants of what was left over of the destruction of Brainiac himself at the end of the House of Brainiac storyline. That was followed by a Gail Simone series. Gail Simone made a guest writer on a wonderful tale, Challenge from the Stars, with writing sort of a classic tale or sort of like a Superman Year One tale. Did a great job. And that was followed by a weekly Action Comics weekly by Mark Waid and Clayton Henry, who did a great Phantom Zone story that really modernized the Phantom Zone and brought Monel back, as ultimately ending with Monel being like the parole officer of the Phantom Zone, giving Phantom Zone criminals that they could get out of the Phantom Zone for good behavior if they behave. And so I thought that was, maybe it's the lawyer in me, but I sort of liked the fact that Mark Waid brought a little bit of real world justice for some of the inhabitants of the Phantom Zone, while also enriching, adding to the mythology of Krypton's past, as well as revitalizing Jor-El and Laura's view of the Phantom Zone as being slightly different than we may have originally thought based on past DC comic mythology. But very well done. Now going on to number 14. We get John Constantine, Hellblazer, Dead in America. I got to tell you, Cy Spurrier, the writer of Hellblazer, Dead in America, he understands so well Hellblazer. He understands it so well, almost too well, because he gives John Constantine a dialogue and an inflection, and he gives him that British tone and dialect in a way that I sometimes have problems understanding exactly what John Constantine is saying. But I don't mind being challenged as a reader when it's so obvious that the writer has something to say through the characters, and just does a phenomenal job. Dead in America is a great name for this, because John Constantine is essentially a corpse throughout the I think it's 11 issues of this story, whereby he is essentially looking for the grains of sand that were stolen from Morpheus, the Sandman, and ultimately it leads him across America, where he deals with issues of immigration, with small town murder, with environmental problems, ultimately ending with Hollywood corruption and all the all the things that we feel are wrong in society right now because of the toxic corporate culture and the way that we just feel like we've lost something, and all of us are sort of yearning for a humanity like enlightenment that may never come. It's it, he John Constantine was sort of moving toward that, and uh, or trying to, despite the fact that he's the most cynical, smartass, sarcastic anti-hero there is slash hero. It's really telling at the end where Cy Spurrier, I think, really nailed the landing of this series, where Morpheus the Sandman is so angry with how essentially humanity, how America in general, sort of perverted his sand, like the way that his sand particles, the way it corrupted America. But ultimately, the sand is only magnifies a corruption that is a potential, and America, it's almost as if the worst of America is expressed and dead in America in this series. And you know how you say we should all strive toward the better angels of our nature. Frankly, no one in this entire series strove to do that. Everybody embraced the darkest aspects of their nature, and that embodies America in this series. It's dark and depressing, and it's so much so that at the end, John Constantine, of all people, has to remind Morpheus that, because Morpheus wants to punish America, he wants to punish the people that stole the sands, essentially, and he's saying, look, shouldn't you maybe be forgiving? Why don't you set an example? Somebody's got to set an example. Who the hell's going to set an example if not somebody who's as all powerful as you? And I thought it was very, very telling, very well done, and kudos to Cy Spurrier. I wasn't a big fan of this Flash run. It did not make my top 20. It would not have made my top 50. But in any event, his Hellblazer absolutely comes in at number 14. All right, coming in at number 13, we have Detective Comics. Ram V did not nail the landing in his Detective Comics run at all. But I cannot deny the fact that when I look back, when I actually find Detective Comics more memorable than Chip Zdarsky's Batman, because there were aspects of Ram V's Detective Comics run that I thought were absolutely inspired, where he gave me so much to think about, and there was so much metaphor, so much symbolism there, and there were issues that I thought were epic and excellent, where Batman is going to be killed by the Orgum family and then hung, and then he escapes through the help of Catwoman and Commissioner Gordon, and all the Bat family comes together, including Nightwing, Batgirl, Azrael. All of them come together in ways that you don't expect, and Ram V he never ever force feeds the reader by making it easy. He challenges the reader. Now, he did it in such a way that at times I think he may have lost some readers, and he challenged me. Certainly there are times where I had to reread things. Some of the backups that were written by Dan Waters and Cy Spurrier, I think, were lost to me and some people. But at the end of the day, I found it thought-provoking enough. And again, I go back to my test. When I look back, some of the most cool stories that really made me think were in Detective Comics, so I have to give him one. Also, because it's in the Detective Comics line, Tom Taylor, at the tail end of 2024, came in and took over Detective Comics and has an absolutely excellent storyline with art by Mikel Janin. So it's really good, sort of redefining or reinterpreting who Joe Chill was, and sort of perhaps revamping a little bit what we thought we knew about Joe Chill and the legacy of Joe Chill in relationship to present day Batman. And I think he's done a really good job, and he's right in the middle of that storyline, and it's definitely well worth a read. And it made it in at number 13. Coming in at number 12 was Green Lantern War Journal. Philip Kennedy Johnson. I got to tell you, this Green Lantern War Journal, it was 12 issues long. It ended in 2024. The character work here is what really stood out. But, it felt there was an epic nature to this, to Green Lantern War Journal. Philip Kennedy Johnson was another one where I love the confidence that PKJ has, because he took the mythology that he had established in his Action Comics run, and he incorporated that into that sort of godhood and that mythology that he had introduced in his Superman Action Comics run, and he utilized that in Green Lantern War Journal to great effect with fantastic art by Montos. I mean, there were issues here that absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. The way that Montos can render space battles, can render, and then to turn around and render facial expressions and convey character motivation and work, even in the absence of dialogue. It's just absolutely incredible how great the series was. PKJ, his best moments, in my opinion, that what really put this on the list for me was his character work with John's relationship with his mother, and also his AI construct Ellie that he created to for his mother, who has Alzheimer's, and he wanted his mother to believe that Ellie, who was still alive, his sister, and so it was heartbreaking and heartfelt, but it ended on a very high note, very uplifting, and Green Lantern himself, John Stewart, ended up with 2 rings on top of it, which flowed in well into Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern run, which we're going to get to. That's also on this list. Hint, hint, spoiler alert. But very well done. Kudos to PKJ. Coming in at number 11 is DCV Vampires World War IV. What can I say? Matthew Rosenberg is somebody who's been kind of he's been hit and miss with me. But the reality is he's written a lot for DC. And his DC Vampires has been entertaining. And I love the fact that he really feels to have come into his own this series. I love the fact that DC editorial, obviously, undoubtedly because this is an Elseworlds tale, that they allow him to kill off who he wants in this series. What he's done with the Bat family, what he's done with Damian Wayne, with Green Arrow, Black Canary, Wonder Woman, the making Alfred a Green Lantern. I love the work with Mr. Miracle and Big Barda and their child, who is essentially the chosen one. I mean, can new gods become vampires? I guess they can, but with a little bit of a hiccup. And very well done. There's an overarching story. It's a little bit tropey, but what makes it sort of untropey, or paradoxically, what makes it super cool, is the fact that anybody can die. Matthew Rosenberg always has me on the edge of my seat in these types of stories, which are out of continuity, and I like it that way because I think he's a better writer when he's doing that, quite frankly. And in any event, I think it's just well done. All right, so now let's get into the top 10. And let me see, should I go, we'll go a different background for the top 10. Should we maybe do some space? Sure, why not? All right, coming in at number 10, we have Poison Ivy. Man, I got to tell you, Poison Ivy is sort of a mixed bag for me, because when J. Willow Wilson started doing Poison Ivy, I wasn't sure if she was trying to zig or zag. Because I was conflicted, because I've always liked Poison Ivy. I like her as a villain. I think she's better as a villain than as somebody who is trying to do good. But then, arguably, she always ends up doing villainy in her offhanded attempts to try to do good. That's sort of perhaps the appeal of the character. And even she's an eco-terrorist one minute, and then she's a loving partner to Harley Quinn another minute. She has a lot in common with Harley Quinn, but there's one way she's different than Harley Quinn now, and that is that she's written far better. Harley Quinn is a disaster character. DC has completely destroyed Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn has become a joke. Rather than them trying to take Harley Quinn seriously or even give her a scintilla of verisimilitude within the confines of the continuity of the DC Universe, DC editorial has really shit the bed when it comes to Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is just an ongoing joke in the mainstream DC Universe. I just wish they would... Harley Quinn needs to be more evil or more bad, definitely more on the bad than on the good, and dare I say even more bad, and give her a tinge of evil as well. But they're just too afraid to do that because she just sells too many pajamas, right? And I think Poison Ivy, because Poison Ivy now, and because of the LGBTQ thing, and because Poison Ivy and Harley are partners, they had to move Poison Ivy more to the anti-hero side along with Harley. And but fortunately, Poison Ivy has sort of maintained some degree of her um, wicked ways, some degree of her propensity for wrongness and badness and lethal force, quite frankly. And so, for so long as she keeps that Poison Ivy will remain intriguing. If she's the more she goes toward the good side, the more the more she'll get worse. But right now, Poison Ivy is doing well. J. Willow Wilson's doing a good job, and frankly, the amount of times that I talked about this comic book, it always surprised me. And we got a really interesting, vibrant new origin for Poison Ivy that I think possessed a lot of verisimilitude and connected to Swamp Thing, connected to Dr. Jason Woodrow, connected to the Gardener. It connected to a multiple series of characters that I thought worked really, really well, and as a compliment, and adds well to J. Willow Wilson's resume as a writer, particularly for DC Comics. All right, coming in at number 9. The Penguin. Tom King's Wonder Woman did not make my top 20 list for a whole slew of reasons. Despite the great art by Daniel Sampere, his Wonder Woman, he just doesn't get it. It's going nowhere. The storyline is terrible. It's the worst villain in the last 50 years in DC Comics. The Sovereign looks like Mr. Magoo. Just a terrible job on Wonder Woman. Doesn't get it. But his Penguin was excellent. I really enjoyed his Penguin. And you know, the Penguin is a character for DC that the year 2024 was the year of the Penguin. You got that Colin Farrell does a fantastic job as the Penguin in the HBO series, and Tom King hit it out of the park with this Penguin series, portraying Oswald Cobblepot as somebody who somehow manages to not only rise in the ranks from being a lowly bartender at the Iceberg Lounge to basically being a head of the Gotham Mafia, but he manages to do so by initially starting off as an informant, working for Batman, but utilizes and takes advantage of his relationship as an informant with Batman to manipulate events so that he rises in the ranks of the Mafia himself, and manages to do it masterfully. And Tom King manages to weave this tale in such a way that he does sort of like the time jumps from the past, showing Penguin's formative years, or rather Penguin's formative years as a low-life piece of scum bartender, to a ruthless mobster who's not afraid to even kill his own children. And coming off the heels of Penguin being basically banished or fleeing Gotham, believed to be dead, and just flying off the heels of that, with his children, Aiden and Adeline taken over as the Mafia in Gotham City, and then the Penguin's return and how he returns in full glory. It's just this is one of my highest recommendations for, if you can pick this up and pick it up in 2 trades, by all means do so. You won't be disappointed at all. And by the way, if you think the Penguin in the HBO show is ruthless by how that show ended, pick up this comic. He's equally ruthless here. All right, number 8. Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter. This is a series that was 6 issues long. It actually ended just in December. I got to tell you, Jay Kristoff here, and with art by Terso, this was a surprisingly good series, because most of it's told in black and white, and the only character that exists with any kind of color throughout the story is the young Alec Holland character, who we know to have a connection to the green, and he's sort of like he's like the kid who doesn't appreciate that what his powers actually are. And this is in the land of the Allwinter, basically controlled in the mythology of the story by one of the characters who we know is in the modern iteration would be Mr. Freeze. and his he wants to resurrect and save the life of his Nora, who's been unfortunately frozen in ice because he did that to freeze her to prevent her from dying, because Deathstroke was hired to basically assassinate the king, but accidentally ended up lethally harming Nora, and this leads to the whole land being falling into Allwinter, and that leads to, symbolically, the entire series itself is in black and white. And at first, it's a little bit maybe off-putting, but it's done in such a way that at the end, when victory comes, and it comes with the return of color, and the symbolism and in the series has been excellent. The backup dealing with the origin of the origin of Aquaman in the Dark Knights of Steel universe is also excellent as well, dealing with Jim Gordon and Jonathan and Martha Kent, anyways, very, very well done, and a high recommendation for sure. All right, coming in at number 7, Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. You know, it's funny, looking at the series as a whole, this series made pick of the week 4 times. I believe it was 4 times. I want to be talking more about the statistics on pick of the week later, but I can tell you that this series made pick of the week, 3 times in 2024. This was writer Brian Buccellato, with art by Christian Duce. This was an amazing series. This was so well plotted. It possessed such a high degree of verisimilitude. It was respectful of both DC continuity as well as the continuity within the Godzilla and King Kong universes. Clearly, Buccellato did his homework, and the way that he had it, the way he incorporated the Justice League and the Legion of Doom, and all the monsters in the Godzilla universe / King Kong universe, was just masterfully done. Art was fantastic. This series did have just hundreds of variant covers. It had a gimmick cover as well coming out, where that you could open it up and it would roar. You'd have King Kong's roar or Godzilla's scream or roar or whatever. But it didn't need any of those gimmicks. It was just a fantastic series in and of itself. It didn't really need any of those things. All right, coming in at number 6, Gotham by Gaslight, The Kryptonian Age. This is one that I absolutely had to put on the list. I didn't make the top 5, but the top 5 were incredible. But anyways, the top 6. This is one where Andy Diggle. Wow, this completely wowed me. This was. I should actually tell you. I believe that. Well, there is one other miniseries, I guess, that beat this out. This was the second best miniseries for me. There is one other miniseries that's on my top 5, but this one here is just incredible. The art here by Leonardo Fernandez is just incredible. Hollingsworth on the colors. The way that I thought this was going to be a Batman Gotham by Gaslight sequel, but it's really a Justice League story. It's about the formation of the Justice League and the Gotham by Gaslight universe, and it's done spectacularly well. In fact, this has one of the most interesting renditions of Wonder Woman. In fact, arguably, I have to say this rendition of Wonder Woman was as interesting to me as the Absolute Wonder Woman, which came out this year as well. Very well done by Andy Diggle. He's created a rich universe, an inspired interpretation of Superman as the doting sheriff who's got a crush on reporter Lois Lane, who's come in from the big city. You've got Lex Luthor, you've got Cyborg, you've got John Constantine, you've got Martian Manhunter, but in their own particular iterations that are unique, and you don't necessarily see them coming, and just when you think you do, there's some misdirection. It's very well done, and the irony is, issue 6, it did end on a cliffhanger, but that's okay. As frustrating as that was, I'm glad, because that means we're getting more of this in 2025, and I can't wait. All right, now, coming in at number 5, should we change? Why don't we change our background here? We'll do some snow falling for the top 5. What do you say? All right. Okay, coming in at number 5. Guys, it's so wonderful to be able to put Superman in at number 5. Look, what happened in December? Man, we got James Gunn's Superman preview, the movie coming out July, what is it? Is it July 10th? It's coming out July 11th. Man, that Superman movie, that preview looked absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to see Krypto. What we saw of Krypto, that was incredible. How ridiculous Guy Gardner is. Nailed the ridiculousness of Guy Gardner so well. I'm looking forward to it. Who is Ultraman? Or is he Ulysses? Who is that in the Superman trailer? I don't know, but man, I'm looking forward to it. And I love the romance. The Lois Lane, she looks awesome. It just looks like it's going to be a great movie. But what was also what we can continue to look forward to in 2025 is more great Superman comics. Joshua Williamson has always been a little bit hit and miss with me, but when it came to Superman this year, Joshua Williamson absolutely hit it out of the park. He's done such a fantastic job. Even as leading into Absolute Power, Superman, I think his portrayal of Superman and Lex Luthor with the introducing Supercore, Lex Luthor's daughter, Alina, and even the Chained, that villain. And then coming into introducing Doomsday, and Doomsday is actually the time trapper. And Doomsday, as the time trapper, wants Superman to kill him so he can fulfill his destiny of becoming a god. I mean, all these things, what the hell? And then, of course, we had the House of Overlap between Action Comics and Superman with the House of Brainiac. So much goodness here that it was just a really fantastic year to be a Superman fan. If you're into the comics, and even if you're not into comics, you got the Superman teaser trailer. I mean, and all the talk about Superman with James Gunn. I can't wait for 2025. It's going to be even a better year, fingers crossed, to be a Superman fan. All right, coming in at number 4. Well, what do you know? Absolute Superman. There's that guy again, except this one's a little bit different. Jason Aaron. Wow. There is one absolute character that's higher on this list, but just by a little bit. But Jason Aaron's Absolute Superman, I absolutely love this. I love I love the way that he draws comparisons and analogies between the mining on Krypton and the class structure on Krypton, with the similarities on Earth, and how Superman coming to Earth, he comes to Earth as a what appears to be either a teenager or a young adult, and we're only 3 issues in at the end of 2020 for Absolute Superman. There's a lot more we need to know. Lois Lane isn't a reporter, although she does love writing. She is actually a member of the military unit, the Lazarus unit, that wants to capture Superman. But she clearly has an attraction to Superman and knows that he's a good and compassionate person. We know that Superman himself has got some cynicism about Earth and about humanity, about their perhaps as destined toward destroying themselves as his fellow citizens on Krypton were. There's a lot of angst in this Superman, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of love and compassion and caring for him by him as well. Jason Aaron nails that, and he's got visually, it's extremely interesting what Raphael Sandoval does artistically, and particularly where Superman has this glow about him, and it's sort of embodied by the cape, and the way the cape sort of like oozes like sand particles off the cape. It's just excellent. I'm not gonna. You can watch the multiple reviews on it, but let's just say it's a great year to be a Superman fan, and Absolute Superman was one of the reasons for it. By all means, guys, if you've been living under a rock, you probably haven't heard of it, but you'd be living under a rock if you haven't. Go check it out for sure. Coming in at number 3 is Primer. Wow. Jennifer Morrow, Thomas Krajewski, art by Gerda Lusky. This is something where the Primer series came out in 2024, and the follow-up Primer Clashing Colors. This originally came out as one full. The full story came out as one full trade paperback, my understanding. Every time this comic came out, this story just seemed to make our pick of the week. I don't know if it was every issue, but I think it was most of them. And what an amazing, what a imaginative story about a young girl who basically, uh, she's an orphan. She's finds an adoptive family. She acquires through a long, very interesting, humorous, well written, well dialogued story. She comes across some paints, and each individual paint, along with the various combinations thereof, gives her different kinds of superpowers. What she discovers, her hero's journey is not just one that's written for a young demographic, but can be appreciated by all ages, including this particular adult. And I was really particularly impressed by it. I think this is not only did I say this is a character to watch because it's so well written, but speculator alert, guys. Honestly, if you see back issues of Primer anywhere, especially if retailers are crazy enough to put this in a dollar or $2 or $3 bin, pick it up because this is one to watch. This is a character that's going places, and I hope at some point is going to be a new character in the mainstream DC universe because it deserves it. Full stops. All right. Number two, the silver medal goes to Absolute Batman. Scott Snyder is a writer that's been absolutely on fire. I love his independent work. I'm going to be talking more about his independent work when I review my best indies for 2024. I love his work on Clear, Barnstormers, Night of the Living Ghoul, Dudley Do Right or Dudley Doolittle. I forget his. Anyways, there's a whole slew of Scott Snyder independent titles that I absolutely love. Canary with his collaboration with Dan Panosian, fantastic. And then he comes back to DC to top it off, and he's going to write a little something called Absolute Batman, and have a significant input on the DC All In special, which was great. Which was probably one of the best one shots of 2024 was the DC All In special. Made one of our picks of the week when it came out. Absolute Batman's fantastic. The work here is absolutely phenomenal. The way that Batman's rogues gallery are no longer so much his rogues gallery, but his childhood friends. Bruce Wayne is not rich. He's very intelligent, but he makes all his wonderful toys with his mind and through a lot of ingenuity, and he's not rich. He's just sort of he's relatively poor. Both his parents were not killed. Only his father was. His mother's still alive, and he lives with his mom. He's got an antagonistic relationship with this character, badass character called Alfred, who is kind of an assassin for hire or some kind of agent himself, working for people unbeknownst or that we're still not sure of yet. The Joker is someone who doesn't like to laugh and doesn't like to be made fun of. We just got a tease of that. We got a giant dump truck as a Batmobile. That's crazy. We got a fantastic bat symbol on his chest that actually is a makeshift axe. Crazy. We got that cape. What's with that cape? The cape is fantastic. It's awesome. And the art by Nick Dracota. Whew, wow. The art is fantastic. Dragoti just hitting it out of the park. I mean, between Hayden Sherman, Nick Dracota, and we got Raphael Sandoval on Absolute Superman. Boom. Wow. Crazy stuff. Great stuff. Absolute Batman coming in at number 2. So, now, what do you think made number 1? Number 1, and I'm sure this is probably the easiest guess because it's the one that hasn't been seen yet. But guys, the number 1 DC comic by far, number 1 comic by far is, surprise, surprise, Green Lantern by Jeremy Adams. Not only was Green Lantern the number 1 comic the DC had that came out in 2024, hands down the best, but also Jeremy Adams is the best writer, not just at DC in 2024, but in my view at DC, Marvel, and you can put them all in there. This guy's a star on the rise. He's taken the Jeff Johns route, but he's made it his own. And this has just been an absolutely phenomenal comic. Jeremy Adams has been somebody who is I've said this before that, Trevor and I, of Dark Knight Nation, Trevor, who also he writes the Helix projects, and he's Minutes to Midnight. Check out his Kickstarter, guys. I'll even try to leave a link below for that. We took Jeremy Adams out for lunch a couple years ago at the Calgary Comic Con, and his passion back then was so obvious. It was palpable. And if he had one thing that he was venting about in all the right ways, was that he wanted to be able to do more, and he wanted to have a great relationship with editorial, and he wanted to do this, and he wanted to let him do that. And it was obvious that he was bumbling, just, you know, filled with ideas. And boy, oh boy, did he get an opportunity and took advantage of it to express those ideas in 2024. Done a fantastic job. What he did with Green Lantern, coming out of the Green Lantern War Journal with PKJ, and you know, with the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan being grounded on Earth, and then, you know, coming into space with the quarantine of the United Planet's quarantine finally being broken down, and fighting Lord Theros of the United Planets, and dealing with the corruption of that, and uniting all the Green Lanterns under the threat, leading into the Fractured Lantern storyline that will come into 2025. Guys, this has been absolutely epic, and the art has been absolutely incredible. The Exarmonicos art has been incredible, whether it's Fernando Passarin's art or Exarmonicos art. It's just been absolutely incredible. Check out Green Lantern issue 17 to see the epic Star Wars-like nature of the art. It's been absolutely epic. Jeremy Adams is the first person to give high compliments to the art. He's also the type of guy that's so excited. Every week he gets his comps. He posts tweets. He posts videos on YouTube, surrounded by his kids, opening up the comics. What's not to love about this guy? He's a family man. He knows the importance of family. He came off the Flash. He got people loving. He redeemed Wally West. He got people loving Wally West again before Suspiria went on it. But anyways, that's another story. But this is all about the good stuff. And Jeremy Adams, thank you, man. You did a fantastic job. And kudos to Green Lantern. So now, I want to talk about some of the statistics of the weekly DC Comics statistics for 2024 for the Comic Boom Comic Source channel that I do with Jace. And every week when we review comics, we do our pick of the week. And the comic book that got the most picks of the week in 2024 was Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern. The second one was Primer with 5, Superman with 5. Four votes was Gotham by Gaslight, Kryptonian Age. And Tom King's Wonder Woman got 4 picks of the week, but that was mostly by Chase, not so much by me. Although there was one issue of Wonder Woman by Tom King that I really liked, and that was the battle. There was the one battle issue where she battled all her rogues, which I thought was pretty cool. And Action Comics, Kneel Before Zod, Nightwing, Absolute Power, all got 4 pick of the week, and JL v Godzilla v Kong got 3. Alan Scott, Hellblazer, Batman Dark Age, Batman First Night, Batman Brave and the Bold, and Batman title itself all received pick of the week twice in 2024. One-shots that made our pick of the week in 2024, the Lobo cancellation special was fantastic. If you know, I didn't want to put that as best of 2024, but because it wasn't an ongoing series, but as a one-shot, it was absolutely fantastic. It was the best one-shot of 2024, in my opinion, the Lobo cancellation special. The Poison Ivy Swamp Thing, Feral Trees one-shot was fantastic as well by J. Willow Wilson. She did a really good job on that one, dealing with the mythologies and explaining the difference between Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing, and juxtapose and explain the difference in their relationship with the green, because we know that Poison Ivy has a connection to plants and Swamp Thing has a connection to the green. Well, what is that? What's the differences there? That's actually explained with some degree of specificity in Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, Feral Trees. It's a one-shot. I encourage those of you that are fans of Swamp Thing or Poison Ivy just to pick up that issue. You'll love it. The Nightwing Annual 2024 was also, I thought, very well done. It was very, very good, and it gave us sort of like the origin of the Pirate Queen, and it did so in a way where Tom Taylor did his best Jeff Johns and managed to tweak the continuity in a way that it actually worked, and I thought did a pretty good job of taking the Dan Jurgens Nightwing run and meshing it into his run, and did a really good job doing it. There was a DC Pride issue that was that was quite good as well. One thing about DC Pride anthologies is that sometimes I make the mistake, and I think many of us do, of just assuming that, oh, well, it's just LGBT characters and it's not going to be that interesting, and that the focus is just going to be on their sexuality, and that's just not true. These are really these were excellent stories in the DC Pride 2024 anthology, and it was they were very good. And a lot of them they had nothing to do with the sexuality. Really, they were just really well plotted, good stories. The other one shot was the Ramona Fradden tribute. Ramona Fradden died, a longtime comic book artist, legend in the industry, and that tribute issue was one that we wanted to give recognition of. Flash Facts: a DC miniseries made Pick of the Week 19 times in 2024. So 19 times in 2024. For 19 of the weeks, it was a DC miniseries that made our Pick of the Week, which is incredible when you think about it. And it made us realize, Jason and I both realized, just how important miniseries are to DC, and how I wouldn't have guessed that it would have been that many times it was actually a miniseries instead of a main series proper that made the list. The other thing is Kneel Before Zod was chosen 4 times as Pick of the Week, but did not make my top 20. Now, why didn't Kneel Before Zod, despite being chosen 4 times, did not make my top 20? It's because it didn't nail the landing, and it made, at the end of the day, it landed. The story had some cool moments with General Zod losing his relationship with his son, casting his son off, and then losing his wife Ursa in a battle against the Kuns. But then writer Joe Casey made him into nothing but a one-dimensional character by the end, and just squandered all the potential and made the series, frankly, completely forgettable. And because of that, I just couldn't put it on the top 20 list. And it's really, really sad. But in the pages of Superman, there might be some hope. Hopefully, it's hinted that Lois Lane got her powers from Zod, but I'm hoping she actually got her powers from Ursa, which may have contributed to Ursa's death at the at the hands of the Kuns. That would be more interesting. But in any event, guys, that's all I have to say here for 2024. Thank you for putting up with Jason and I through the year. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing when you did. And please leave your comments. Do you agree or disagree with my list? What did I miss in your opinion? Let me know. I thank you again. I wish you all happy holidays. And yeah, until next time, Comic Boom out.